This is the fourth video in the series AI without jargon, and today I'm going to talk about voice first UIs. And this is what got me really interested in AI in the first place. I thought I'd come out here in the outdoors since it's a nice sunny day. I'm currently in our treehouse. Voice has been the dream for 30 years or so of the way of communicating with computers, but up until recently it hasn't worked at all well. The answer now, with things like smart speakers, with Siri on the phone and Cortana on the PC, that voice is now becoming more of a reality. It's the smart speakers that have made the massive differences though over the last couple of years, because it's made possible question response type interactions with a computing device. Both Amazon and Google allow developers such as myself to develop apps to create these user interfaces, and I'm going to be talking a bit about that in a minute. But this is just the beginning, and it's all going to change to the extent that it's my belief that within, say, 5 years, voice will be hugely more significant in the computing world, to the extent that it may actually dominate our interaction with computers. This may be hard to believe at this moment in time, but it is my belief that voice will become the dominant means of communication with computers, and as a result people will be making design decisions on how to interact with computers on a voice first basis. Now this is actually incredibly similar to what happened with mobile some 10 years ago. At that time it wasn't at all clear that mobile was going to take over for most people, although I was working in the field and believed it also at the time. But the problem was that everyone believed in the existing user interfaces. At the time there were large screens on PCs, and the phones had smaller screens than on average they have today. So it was hard to actually think that anything with an inferior screen could take over. Developers like myself ended up just modifying web interfaces, desktop experiences, to work on a smaller screen. It turned out it was the wrong thing to do, because basically we were trying to replicate the same functionality that had been designed for a large screen onto a smaller screen. And after about 5 years it was realized this was totally wrong. And what we should be doing is developing the user interface from scratch just for the mobile device. And once this was done, we found that those user interfaces worked incredibly well on the desktop. In fact, they were much simpler on the desktop and worked better for everyone. This same thing is happening now. What's happening are developers are developing both text chatbots and voice applications, and the text chatbots are actually much more established and older, and generally what people do is they use the text chatbot to develop the voice chatbot. This is wrong, just like it was in the old days with web and mobile. What you should be doing is developing the voice UI from scratch. And let me explain the sort of things, the wrong things that people are doing. I have to say that not everyone is going to agree with what I'm about to say, because people get so involved in their own way of working. But I do believe that within 5 years this conclusion will be generally accepted, because at that stage voice will have become so dominant that text actually becomes less important. Now one of the things about text is you can get quite rich user experiences. You can actually present choices as buttons. I've just moved to the side so I can show you to my side what these sort of screens look like. Now, one of the things you can do with text chatbots is have quite rich experiences. You could have choices and buttons to choose between options. Now, to do options in voice is actually a lot more difficult, or not quite the same. My view is you shouldn't have so many choices with voice. You shouldn't give the user choices. You should just take them to actually what they want. And let's try and explain by example what I mean. I'm going to show you the voice user interface for an app which I call Business Elf. Now, the reason for the word elf is that elves are magical and they can give you answers without, or sort of read your mind, if you like. In fact, this is the idea that the user isn't given choices, they're just given information. Now, this particular app is an RSS reader that just reads feeds from publications, and it ends up with lots of business news stories. Now, what ELF does is it looks to see about your usage in the past and sees what you're actually really interested in and what you're not interested in, and will actually only give you the stories it thinks you find interesting. If you actually interrupt ELF from talking, then it realizes that you're not interested, and it will actually downscore that particular type of story. You can see this is what I call choiceless computing. The user's given no choice, they just are given what ELF thinks they should be listening to. And incidentally, it does some other things like obviously the full article might be of interest, and you can add it to a basket and later send all the contents of your basket to your mobile phone via email, so that you can read it at a later date or a later time, for example on the train on the way to work. So you can see that's quite different from a user interface that provides lots of choices, lots of buttons for the user. And it's my belief that as time goes on, the concept of this choiceless approach, where you have an artificial intelligent backend that can know about you, understand your likes and dislikes, and present you with the information you really want. Now, when I say choiceless, what I mean is that the designer of the voice UI needs to have a goal of choicelessness. But obviously sometimes you actually do need a few choices. For example, when you're confirming that something was said correctly. But remember, the point is that the designer should have the goal of a perfectly choiceless system. I mean, just think about it. When you have a conversation with a normal human being, in a non-formal sense, you don't have choices, you just have a conversation. Now, it has got a bit confusing recently because the various smart speaker manufacturers like Amazon and Google are both now producing versions of their speaker with a screen, and on the screen there can be choices and you can touch the screen. But the important thing to realize is that the designer should still not go out of his way to use these facilities, because it has to still work on a device without a screen. So, and the designer must be looking to support all devices. I did say that some people would not agree with this approach, because designers get in their heads the approaches that they're used to, and they're used to doing good visual designs. And some of these rich user experiences that are available on Facebook Messenger and even on the Echo Spot and Echo Show are very actually useful, but and sexy. But the reality is that things have to work on the ordinary devices too. So just think about it, everybody. design your systems so that they don't need lots of choices. And once you've done that, you'll realize that actually in pure text systems without voice, it's actually useful to do that as well, because it makes it more human-like. From Ollie and myself, that's it from this week. Please subscribe, like and comment below. See you next week.